guys, we're live and it's time to get started. How's everyone doing this morning, Monday morning? Let me know. Drop a hello. Tell me how you're doing. Tell me how the weather is there. In Billings, Montana, we're finally getting some summer weather. Last weekend it was snowing, so glad to have the change in pace. So I'm gonna kind of review a little bit here before today. We're going to review steps to help you get rid of those nasty bad habits that you can't seem to kick. But I wanted to review a little bit first, kind of what we've been covering this month, so that it's all in context. So last week we talked about, we covered in, sorry, I'm all over the place this morning. This last week I wrote about what's your why, figuring out what's your why, so that as you're working towards your goals, you can figure out what's actually going to help you stay inspired and motivated to move forward. Specifically in the video last week, we talked about all those rules, all those myths that we tell ourselves, the stories that we tell ourselves that may be affecting our ability to stay focused. I asked you in the group, those of you that are in the group, to share maybe some of the myths that you have in your life, and I just wanted to share one of those that I was reading through this morning. So Barbara shared one of the myths, actually two of the myths, that's really affected her life in the last decade, were her views on exercise. So she had this idea in her head that she had to exercise an hour and a half every single day, and knowing her personally, that hour and a half was an intense hour and a half of exercise every day, which as a mom of 2 kids is not reasonable. So it made her feel like she was failing in her fitness goals. And another one that she shared with all of us on the group was her diet. And she had this idea, which I've talked about before too, that that there's a special way and a specific way that you have to follow a diet, or else you're basically failing from a nutrition standpoint. That if you're not doing these certain things, whatever they are that you think they need to be in your head, or that someone is telling you, it means that you're not healthy, which is not true. Truly, your health all starts in your mind and with the stories that you're telling yourself, and then we work from there. So thank you for sharing those, Barbara. I can relate to those, and I'm sure other people can too. So that's kind of what we covered last week as far as the stories we tell ourselves, and it's kind of a good segue into habits, because those stories that we tell ourselves can turn into full-blown bad habits that are affecting the way that we're trying to work on good habits or work on good steps in our health. So this month has been all about how to picking one good self-care habit and working on it all month. That's been what we've been working on. That's what I've been trying to work on myself and getting everyone else, keeping everyone accountable in the group. And some of you may have noticed that you're doing good for a while, and then one of those bad habits tries to sneak in there and suddenly derails your progress, and you feel like you're back at square one or step one, and it leaves you feeling frustrated. So I want to give you some steps today to figure out and finally kick some of those bad habits. If you're around, I see more people popping on. Say hi. I see Courtney saying hi. Hope you guys are all having a good morning. So I've got 5 steps that I put together. It's in the article. I linked it up above in the description, so you can check out the full article later if you'd like to. They're really pretty straightforward, the 5 steps, but it's still good just to kind of give you perspective for how to get started. So the first one is obvious. We want to identify the bad habit, which again is obvious, but if we don't do that, then it's going to keep holding some power over us until we can pinpoint it. Hi, Courtney. Until we can pinpoint it and really figure out what that habit is, so that we can actually change it. From there, we want to figure out the triggers behind it. So what in our space, in our life, is triggering that habit? Once we know those triggers, then we can modify them or replace them or just avoid them if we can, so that we can start focusing on what we actually want to be working on as far as building good habits. Once we know what we need to do to modify, then we really have to do that fourth step is doing a motivation check. Because if you're not motivated to get rid of that habit, if you're like kind of okay that it's there, you know that maybe you want to get rid of it at some point, but you haven't put any steps into or any thought into how you're going to do it, and you're not feeling inspired, it's not going to happen. So kind of do that motivation check. If you need some motivation, you can go back to last week's video and last week's articles and start figuring out what your why is and what you're trying to work towards in your health. Then from there, it's the name of the game for any habit building. If you're trying to build a habit or get rid of a habit, you got to be consistent. So you got to consistently stop doing that habit so that the neural circuitry in your brain and your nervous system can get rid of, maybe not completely, but at least weaken that circuitry so that it's not the automatic thing that you turn to when you're faced with whatever that situation is that makes you have that habit. So I wanted to give an example of that. I wanted to break that down with what I'm working on this month. So I shared with the group at the beginning of the month that I'm working on building more nourishing meals into what I'm eating each day. So my goal for self-care was to add 1 smoothie and 1 salad a day. I haven't been successful with the salad. We've maybe been doing it twice a week, which isn't consistent enough to make that a good habit, but we've been doing good with the smoothies. We've been rocking the smoothies. My daughter insists on having them every morning now and gulps them down, so that's all good. So that is the habit that I'm trying to build up, and what I'm trying to replace that, so the underlying bad habit that I'm trying to replace is my tendency to graze and snack all morning between when I have breakfast and when I have lunch. It was a bad habit I've developed over the last year or so, where I have breakfast and then I'm just like grazing whatever I can find in the kitchen or in my purse if we're out and about, snacking when I don't need to, when I'm not hungry or I'm reaching for stuff like bad foods that I don't need. So I identified my habit, then the triggers. The big ones for me that I've come to realize are boredom. Like I work a lot from home now, and my brain just needs a break sometimes. It gets a little fried while I'm working at my computer, and that boredom sets in, or that monkey brain, I guess you could call it too. Since I do work from home, there's the environment issue, that the kitchen and the snacks are literally in my line of vision a lot of the day, and they just are calling to me from the kitchen. So there's that one. Another one that I've come to realize is if I don't eat enough for breakfast, if I'm not picking foods that nourish me well first off in the morning, then I get too hungry, and that's a problem too. When my blood sugar drops, then I just want to snack on anything I can find. And my last trigger is when I can't find if I am truly hungry and I want to eat a snack and I don't have something planned in my mid-morning that's a healthy snack, then I just reach for whatever is easier, whatever is automatic, whatever sounds good, which isn't always the best. So those are my triggers. Boredom, seeing the food on the counter in my pantry in the kitchen, being too hungry, or not having an alternative snack. So I've worked pretty hard on modifying those this month, and one of them was having the smoothie. So sometimes I have a smoothie for breakfast, or I make it right away while I'm making like an oatmeal, which is one of our go-tos for breakfast, and I save it in the fridge so that if I am hungry, it's there. Sometimes I have it in the morning if I need a snack, or I'll forget about it and I'll find it in the afternoon after lunch and be excited that I have something healthy to snack on. So that's been a huge game changer, is that I have that something to reach towards. As far as the other cues, I could move, which I haven't, but I could move where I'm working from, so that the kitchen isn't staring at me all day long. Or I could just set up my environment a little better in my kitchen. So, that's why fruit bowls are great. There's a fruit bowl there calling my name instead of the bag of chips hiding in the corner. So those are all simple ways that I can start modifying the triggers so that I'm not tempted by that bad habit of snacking and grazing. So just like those rules that we talked about last week, so those stories and those myths and everything that's telling us to think a certain way that's not serving us, it can ultimately snowball into a habit, as you can see with my story. We end up building these habits that maybe at some point serve us, or maybe they never serve us and somehow they just took a grip into our life because we did them enough times that they got stuck. They're stuck in our brains, they're stuck in our habits, and since they're hardwired, they feel automatic now. And that's where it's really hard to kick them. It's really hard to get rid of them when they're automatic like that. And it's kind of like a paradox a little bit, because we know those certain habits aren't good for us, but since they are automatic to us, they almost bring us a level of comfort. And that's why I know a lot of women and a few guys in here too have talked about why it's so hard to kick their junk food habits, because it is like a level of comfort for them, even though on some level they know they want to change it. It's comfortable, it's automatic, it's what you've taught your body to want over the years. So it will take some work to break it. And that's one piece that I want to talk about today, is how to do it without your body resisting so much, how to break those habits. So there's the idea that when we want to change a habit, we gotta just use our willpower. Like, we're gonna will our way through it, we're gonna muscle our way through until, gosh darn it, we reach our goal or we get rid of our habit or whatever we're doing. Willpower is good for a while, even on a daily basis. They found, I'm sure you've seen the research out there, that we have like a certain amount of willpower every day, and once we've used up those reserves, then we're left feeling kind of stuck. So that's why many of us make bad decisions related to our health later in the day, because we've already used up all our willpower reserves with all the rest of our day, while we're at work, while we're with kids, or whatever else we're doing during the day. So for a while it might work. We can, on the short term, we can muscle our way through. If we're motivated enough, it will work for a while. But the problem is, I heard this weekend that I really liked, is whenever there's a force, so if you're forcing something, there's a counter force pushing back. So if you're trying to force your way through to get rid of a habit or to build a new one, there's going to be that force pushing right back. And when you have that resistance, that tug and pull, at some point you're going to just feel defeated and want to give up. And I don't want that. We want to change the way you're approaching that, so that you don't feel like you have to muscle your way through. Instead, it just feels not necessarily easy, but you at least kind of know what to expect and what you're working towards. So that's where, with a bad habit, we want to break the pattern. So you have these thoughts in your head, you have these triggers that automatically start a whole process of, kind of gets your body primed for whatever this habit is. And we want to completely break it. We want to break that thought process. We want to stop those actions. And that takes some novelty. So we gotta start adding new things into our routine. And that's why what we talked about already, the modifying part of it, is really important. We're finding new ways to approach this habit, so that different nerves are starting to wire together, and those choices are what's going to get stronger in what feels comfortable and automatic to you down the road. So with those new things that you're trying to work on, it is going to come with a little bit of discomfort, but it should be a discomfort that you are expecting. Like, you know what's coming next, and you can kind of lean into a little bit, like, oh, I that's my body and mind telling me, like, whoa, what are you doing? Like, we already have this like perfect automatic thing that we do. We don't need to change it. And you know that you can, but you need to have these right steps in place, and the right mindset really is the biggest piece. You need to have that mindset piece in place. So recognize that when you're trying to come out of that autopilot and you're trying to get rid of those automatic things, it is going to be uncomfortable, and your body's going to want to, and your mind are going to tell you, like, oh, wouldn't it be easier just to grab the junk snacks that you always eat and not worry about making that smoothie? Recognize that that's just part of deprogramming a bad habit. There's a book that I haven't read yet. It's on my list, and I think it summarizes what you need to do perfectly. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. So you have all these habits, some of them that aren't serving you, that you want to get rid of, and you really have to, they're like so built into you that you probably identify with them now. And we have to push through that. We have to get uncomfortable, and on the other side, we're going to have those good habits that are automatic, that we actually want in our day, which is obviously ultimately our goal. So a few other ways that we can push into that, kind of lean into those habits so that we can deprogram them. We talked about about how we can modify some of those triggers so that we just we aren't triggered into those bad habits. Other things, like a really popular, and for good reason they're popular, is things that make us pause and kind of change the way we perceive what's in front of us, so we change our perception. So one of those is just stopping to tune in. So like stopping, like, okay, I think I'm about to, like, I'm craving this, or I want to do this. Why? Like, ask yourself why. Why am I doing this? Is it because I want it? Is it because I'm about to do what's comfortable for me and it's a habit? So just literally taking that one extra second to stop and pause and ask why, it'll break up that cycle that you usually automatically go into. And just that 1 second that breaks it up will help give you a little more power and a little control over it. The other two are with pausing is anything you can do just to, like, maybe not necessarily think about it, but just, again, pausing. Maybe you're going to take a couple deep breaths. That's going to change, again, kind of down-regulate your nervous system so that you can take out a little more control over whatever's going on in your current situation. Or even counting to 5. That's a big one, for, like, if we want to scream at somebody about something and we just take a second to count to 5, maybe we can gather our thoughts and realize that might not be the best automatic response to what's going on. So that's actually, I wanted to go over one more example and kind of break down how we would use those 5 steps. And the example that I did want to use, again, from my own life is having that reactivity. So being reactive towards loved ones, like my example is going to be towards my daughter, going to be husband, wife, whoever. So a lot of us, I know growing up, there's a little bit of emotional reactivity in our household, and I think that's kind of somewhere deep in my subconscious already. Then I had my own daughter, and I love her to death, but she can be obnoxious sometimes, and she challenges me a lot, which is a good thing, but some days it's more trying than others. So especially last summer, we were in a little studio apartment. My husband was gone most of the day. I found myself getting really annoyed with her at the end of the day for no reason. She was 1 year old. There's no reason to get so annoyed with her. So I'd be reacting to her when she wanted to be picked up, and I was trying to cook dinner, and I'd be just getting so frustrated with her, and it's like, okay, I need to fix this. So here's what I figured out without having these steps in place yet, but I figured it out. I was having the feeling, one of my triggers was that I was feeling out of control. Like, I wanted her to do what I wanted to do, and not having that control, which I'm a type A person, so I didn't have that control, so it made me want to lash out. So that was one trigger. The other one was that it was always at the end of the day, so we were tired. We'd had a busy day. Especially if we'd gone out and about and ran errands, those were all kind of triggers, whereas like the more we did during the day, the more irritable I was with her at the end of the day, and usually the more whiny and needy she was. So it was kind of like a catch-all, we were building off of each other's energy a little bit. So those were the triggers. So what I did is I totally modified those. I changed our routine. So I knew that one of the triggers was if I was cooking in the evening and she wanted to be held, which was pretty much every night, I would get frustrated because I wouldn't be able to get dinner done. So I focused on totally changing my schedule around so that as much as I could, it didn't happen every day, but as much as I could, I was meal prepping like in the morning. Like if I could get the veggies I was going to cook that night chopped, if I could get something prepped, then it would be easy, and I could maybe even cook with a baby in one arm if I needed to, because I can't chop with a baby in one arm. Not that good. So just that little change made a big difference. I also asked for a little more help from my husband with dinners. That helped a lot too. And then I also changed my mindset, because that's a big thing. I changed the perspective. I actually ended up reading a book last summer called Simplicity Parenting, and another one, oh, I can't remember the name of it. It's something about start connecting and stop yelling. I can't remember the exact title, but that was the tagline. Helped me change my perspective, that I was kind of viewing her as like being needy and just being in my way and obnoxious, and I changed my perspective to, you know, she wants my attention because she wants the love, and she is tired at the end of the day too, and she just needs that connection. So the big question I always asked myself, if she wanted something, or if something was bothering me that she was doing, I'd say, does it really matter? Like, does it really matter that she's tearing every dish out of all the silverware out of the cabinets? No, it does not. Even though on some level, I think it does. When I stop and pause and breathe for a second, I realize that it's not the end of the world, and I don't need to be so reactive with her over that. So again, those are all, so I worked my way through that process. So I want to review it one more time. Hopefully those examples kind of helped you understand how you can use it with any of your own bad habits. And let me know in the comments, either now live or later, like, what's a bad habit that you're now kind of thinking about, like, maybe I could work on that one, and you're starting to think about some triggers that maybe you weren't thinking about before. So I'd love to hear those. I'll share some more of mine throughout the week also. So 1, we got to identify it. We got to give that bad habit a name so that we can work on deprogramming it. 2, figure out those triggers. When you figure out those triggers, then you can make a game plan from there and how to reverse them on their head. So that's when we're going to modify them, or maybe we'll just completely replace them with something better. Or if you can, I mean, we can't avoid all bad habits. Like, there's certain things that we can't avoid, but if you can just completely avoid the situation, that's great too. Again, as you're working through this, do a motivation check. Make sure that you're motivated enough to work on all this, because you're going to have to be, that 5th step, you're going to have to be consistent. If you're not spending at least 60-75% of your week working on this goal for at least a month, if not more, it's just not going to stick. It's got to be consistent. It's got to be repetitive. You got to be motivated, and you got to really want it. So there you have it. If you want to review those a little more, again, that article is in the description that you can look through. I have a few other ideas in there. And it's a great way to kind of tackle some of those issues that may have been popping up this month as you're trying to work on your self-care habit. Some of those bad habits may have been trying to derail you. And then we can go from there. Sorry, my husband's posting some of his bad habits. Is distracting me. I'm not used to all the stuff going on the screen. Okay, so next week is let's see, we still have 2 more weeks of covering how to be consistent with your health habits. So next week we're going to be covering how to start actually working on building those good healthy habits, and talking about how to start an actual 30-day challenge. Which we're kind of in the middle of a challenge right now, but give you tools to work on other ones in the future. So I hope to see you next week. Thanks for tuning in this week, and hopefully that gave you a little food for thought for how to work on your bad habits. And I'll see you next time. Enjoy your week.